What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Grant for One for a Review, and I am back with yet another movie review. And today we're doing another straight to Netflix movie. Feels like a while I've done this. The last one I did, if I remember correctly, was Bright. Yeah, what a great movie that was. Well, today we're going to be talking about something cooler and much more interesting, in my opinion, and that is Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle. I had to look at my monitor really quick because I didn't know if that was the correct name, but that is the correct name. So this movie came out in Japan a few months ago. In fact, I was there for the semi-premiere. I didn't watch it, though. I just happened to be there when they premiered it. And so, yeah. And it finally came out on Netflix just today, which is the day that I'm reviewing it, not the day that it's going to be published on YouTube. And I'm here to give my thoughts. Now, I did watch the first movie, which was Godzilla Monster Planet. I think that's the name of the movie. If I'm not, I'll definitely write a note right there on screen. There you go. I watched it a long time ago when it first came out, and it was okay. It was a fine movie. It had some interesting ideas. Basically, the point is that humanity has left Earth because Godzilla left down so much destruction and was just destroying everything, killing billions of people. So they just abandoned Earth and we're looking for another place. Now, I'm assuming that if you're watching this video, you've probably watched the first movie, so I won't go too much into detail about the first movie. But basically, the way the first movie ended was with a big cliffhanger that there's a huge Godzilla, even bigger than they expected, and they pretty much lost. And this movie, Battle on the Edge of City on the Edge of Battle, takes place literally right after. This is literally right after the events of the first movie, and we follow the same characters, which our main character, by the name of Haru. We follow him as they discover a tribe that has been living on the Earth for many, many years. They believe to be humans, but no, and as it turns out, they are different. They are just simply humanoids, like everybody else who's there. Now, this tribe, they meet with this tribe and they capture them and they start discussing the plans of Godzilla. They start discussing all kinds of mumbo jumbo, and then this leads to the discovery of nanobites that they use in order to kill the different creatures. Once they ask them to tell them where this technology was found, they take them to this city that apparently, and this is true what I'm saying, is a city that was developed by Mechagodzilla's corpse, because his corpse was developed by nanobites, nanometal, that spread throughout the land and created this big city that was covered by a fog so then Godzilla could never find it. So they realized that Godzilla is probably looking for this so that he can finally destroy it, and they use it to their advantage. They use the technology that they find there. What a mouthful. Anyways, so yes, that's pretty much the basic story. Obviously, there's more details in there that I'm not going to spoil in this movie review because I'm sure a lot of you would like to watch it. But stick around and let me just give my thoughts on this really quick. I was expecting this movie to be pretty good. For one reason, the promise of Mechagodzilla, the posters that I saw looked really nice and really encouraging. The one that you're seeing right now on the screen. Based on this image, I was expecting a lot. I was honestly expecting it to be a monster versus monster movie. But I am here to tell you, I just hit the cord on my mic. I am here to tell you that is not the case for this film. In this film, Mechagodzilla does not make an appearance at all. In this film, at all. You don't see Mechagodzilla whatsoever. And I know this may sound weird because he is on the front cover of the poster. So you would assume that he is there, but no. I'm not even talking about, he's not even in a flashback. You don't see his remaining corpse. You just see a piece of his head. And that's all. And they just kind of mention Mechagodzilla. They mention that they built a Mechagodzilla, and that's it. And quite honestly, that was pretty disappointing for me because I did expect this to be somewhat different from the last movie. I expected it to maybe not go all out, but continue with a much stronger story. They already had a strong foundation, but now they kind of fumbled it, is probably the correct terminology for that. And that's one of my biggest problems with this movie is just that there's a lot of things that kind of work but don't, and there's a lot of talk. Now, talk isn't especially boring at all. Talk can be very interesting. You know, It could forward the plot in a very good way, and by the characters, they can make interesting conversations and interesting scenes in general. However, that doesn't happen in this movie as much as you'd like. The first 30 minutes of the film is strong. I will admit that the first 30 minutes of the film is strong. And I was ready to really just say, fuck the critics of Japan, because I did read a few articles from there, and they weren't too kind to this movie. I was about to say, fuck the critics from Japan. I haven't seen any critics from here. I was about to say, fuck all of them. This movie is great, but it goes downhill. It slowly goes downhill, and it gets slower, and the pacing gets pretty bad, like I said, 30 minutes into it. The first 30 minutes is really strong when they're figuring out the world that they're in. They're meeting up with this tribe, and when the tribe's in the movie, it's actually kind of interesting. But it doesn't stay like that for long because, like I said, it goes downhill. That once they get to Mecha Godzilla City, that's when everything starts to just slow down and really not it doesn't become more interesting. They have some interesting ideas about the technology, the nano metal that creates the technology that they're using, but and the nano metal also creates weapons that they're using to trap Godzilla at the end of the movie. Like, all that's interesting, all that's fun, and even when they get the upgraded suits that fly, because you need to have a mech in this movie, it is pretty cool. It is pretty visually interesting, but that happens at the end of the movie. It's the middle portion of the movie that just really just drags on. And while it's not necessarily that boring, I could definitely see a general audience not respond well to it because there's not much going on in the middle of it except for the human drama, which you do need the human drama in monster movies, even though some hack critics on YouTube will say, no, fuck it, give us all monsters. That's not true. You can't have all monsters in a movie. You need the human elements to it. And this movie does attempt to do that, and they do have a good conflict, technically. On a technical standpoint, it's a good conflict. However, it's executed so poorly because the only way for this conflict to work is really that you need to know the characters in order to care about what's going on. However, there's really only one character in this trilogy so far that we really know, and that's Horo. That's the only character we really kind of relate to or kind of care about because, he's the only one we've been with and the only one we focus with. And there are two others, of course, in the movie that you do know, like Memphis, which is pretty much his friend in the movie, his best friend. And then Yuko, which is the love interest. Go figure. However, both of these characters, Memphis and Yuko, really didn't play that much of a part in the first movie, so when they came around in this movie, I honestly kind of forgot. I was like, oh yeah, I remember them now because I just saw them, but I never really remembered them as characters because they don't really have a character. I guess Memphis has somewhat of a character, but for the most part, Yuko is just I don't really know how to describe her. She's just a character. She's just the girl there who falls in love with Horo, which her motivation for it is really just kind of like, it's not strong. Maybe if they fleshed her out a little bit more, it would have been better, but they don't. And same thing with Memphis. The only one who's kind of fleshed out is Horo. And unfortunately, we don't really care for Horo because he's not really that good of a character. He resembles another character from another anime that I don't like by the name of Eren Yeager. And he's just sort of there. He's just a character who's full of hate. And that's really all there is to it. Now, there are other characters in this movie. Like I said, for the conflict to work, you need to care about the people, but you don't really spend time with the soldiers. You barely spend enough time with Memphis or Yuko to really care about them. So it's really hard when this conflict happens between the people. You don't really care. You're like, whatever. They could figure it out somehow. And that was really disappointing. Another disappointing fact is the tribe. The tribe does not play a big part in this movie. They're in the beginning, like I said, and that's when the movie is strongest, but then they leave halfway through the film, and you don't really see them that much. They're just in the background, saying a bunch of crap. You do have the twins in the movie, which are supposed to be like the twin fairies that Mothra has, and that's another thing I'm going to bring up in a little while, but again, they don't really play that much of a role. They're just there. Again, they're just there. They showed up in the movie. And as far as the monsters go in this film, like I said, Mecha Godzilla does not come into the movie at all. They just tease him, which is very annoying because they don't even show, not even a picture of him. They just tease him with the name. And then they do the same thing with Mothra. They don't actually name drop Mothra, but they do say the tribe, while describing their history, they describe this this being, this monster that they kind of worshipped in a way to defeat Godzilla. It was the protector of the earth, which is Mothra. And it fought Godzilla and lost, and all it left behind was an egg. Now, it's assumed that the egg will birth Mothra, but we don't see the egg. Again, they just sort of say there's an egg, but we never see the egg, and we never see a fight with Mothra. We never see Mothra at all, not even a cave drawing, nothing. They just name drop the character, and that's it. The same thing with Mechagodzilla, they name drop. And with Godzilla, he's barely in the movie. And when I mean barely, I mean next to nothing. Just like the last movie where Godzilla was dormant the entire film and came out at the very end, literally at the very end of the film, like the last minute. Almost the same thing happens here, except it's the last like 15 minutes of the movie. He comes out and he does some cool stuff, which admittedly is very cool, is very great. It does pick up a little bit, but it never reaches that point where you're like, this could be good. And that's very unfortunate. And I was really hoping for more, but that's all we got. We just got Godzilla came out again. And the movie ends on another goddamn cliffhanger, just like the first movie. And it's not even a different cliffhanger. It's honestly the same cliffhanger. In the first movie, the cliffhanger ends with them not succeeding and Godzilla running amok, destroying shit. Same thing happens in this movie, except some other things happen, but I'm not gonna spoil what happens, but some other things happen, but it essentially ends the same way. They don't succeed, and Godzilla just runs amok, destroying everything. Now, granted, I didn't expect them to kill Godzilla, but I expected a more satisfying conclusion. Or actually, in all honesty, I expected a more satisfying conclusion from the first movie, and this one was supposed to have the tragic ending, but because the first movie had a tragic ending, now this one has a tragic ending. I really don't know what they plan to do with that. I don't know why they did that. Just another goddamn cliffhanger. Go figure. Well, anyways, next thing I'm going to talk about is the animation. Now, this is a little bit of a personal thing. It may not apply to you, or it may apply to you. Now, this is obviously this is made by Toho Animation. This was Toho Animation, and the aesthetic in this movie, I guess you could kind of say I'm kind of picky when it comes to Japanese animation. If it's from America, whether it be 2D animation or just MS Paint or fucking 3D animation, I don't really care because I don't really watch that many animated shows from America. However, when it comes from Japan, I strictly stick to the 2D format, and there are some 3D animated shows or movies that I have watched that can pull off that aesthetic, like 3D animation, like somewhat photorealistic, but yet with the anime aesthetic. I usually enjoy those, say like the Resident Evil movies or Gantz or the Final Fantasy films. Something like that, it's like, okay, I can get into that. But when it comes to this kind of animation, it doesn't look bad, don't get me wrong, it looks good. And there are some parts in it that look absolutely gorgeous. However, personally, I would have preferred it to be 2D animated, but instead it's 3D animation. So on that level alone, I really can't sell the movie with its stellar animation, because to me personally, I think it looks okay, except for a few scenes that look absolutely gorgeous. For the most part, I thought it looked okay. And that's really all I could say about the movie. It's not amazing. It's not amazing, and it's not really a satisfying conclusion towards the end of the movie. It's an hour and 40 minutes long, and it's not really that boring. It has a good start and has a somewhat entertaining end, but for the most part, you're left wanting more. You're left wanting to know more about the drama. You're left wanting to know more about the characters, and at the end of the movie, you really don't care about what happens, which is really a shame. You're supposed to want to see them succeed, but I really don't. It doesn't really matter to me at this point. And the fact that the marketing had Mechagodzilla, like they had a rendered model of his character, like they showed that off, and they even have toys and different figures of it already. So it's really confusing me why he's not in the movie, and that was a big disappointing thing. And that does play into my expectations and my yeah, that does play into that. When it comes to the third movie, they are doing a third movie, of course. I don't. This movie did okay at the box office. They are doing a third movie, which I have heard rumors that Mothra and King Ghidorah will be in it, which is fine and all. But considering that the Toho, Warner Brothers, and Legendary collaboration of Godzilla King of the Monsters, directed by Michael Dougherty, considering that movie is focusing also with Rodan, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, I would have preferred, if these rumors are true, I would prefer if they did not bring back King Ghidorah or Mothra. I'd prefer they choose different monsters or come up with new monsters. I mean, that's my personal opinion. If they're there, I mean, I guess it'll be kind of neat. But considering that just next year, which the third part's going to come out, and next year is also when Godzilla King of the Monsters will come out, I think it would just kind of be overkill. I don't think it would be that cool to see it. That being said, forget about the third movie. Judging this movie on its own, my final verdict for it is a 5 out of 10. And yes, I have given so many 5 out of 10s lately. What can I say? There's so much room in my life for mediocrity. I can't say this movie's bad. It's not bad. It's just incomplete. There's a lot of stuff missing, in my opinion. There's not enough of the world was explored. Not enough of the characters were explored. I don't think it didn't warrant that ending. It didn't deserve that ending. It definitely didn't earn it. And I really, really expected more. I wanted more. And I guess I'll just have to wait for the next movie or Godzilla King of the Monsters, whatever else comes out. As far as I'm concerned, this movie is a big steaming pile of shit. It's a disappointment, and while it's not the worst Godzilla movie I've ever seen, it's definitely not in my top 10. It's definitely not in my top 15 or top 20. It misses the mark, and that is unfortunate. I did have high hopes for it. That being said, if you guys want to watch it, it is on Netflix, so it is free. So if you have Netflix, I'll definitely say this. I don't recommend the movie necessarily, but if you have Netflix, there is no harm in just popping it on and maybe watching the first couple minutes of it. So again, it's one of those movies where it's like, I don't really recommend it, but it is on Netflix. So if you're at all curious, you could just go on Netflix and skim through it and do all that jazz. So I guess I'll just leave it there. It's a 5 out of 10. I personally don't recommend it. I think it was disappointing, but hopefully the next Godzilla movie will be good. If you guys have watched it, please let me know down in the comments right below. Please don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. As always, have a nice day, and I will see you next time on One Fair Review.